All right. So, welcome everyone. Hopefully, everyone is here for our decoding your child's ups and downs, right? Whew, all those feelings. Practical strategies for parents. We have a lot of really great strategies today and just a little bit of information about what is happening for our young children's development when we're getting these really big ups and downs. I don't know if anyone else feels like they have a kiddo who sometimes goes from 0 to 100, or you're having the best afternoon ever, and then it feels like everything crumbles, or sometimes that happens within 10 minutes. I know in my household, I have a 3.5 year old and a 1 year old, and it is an emotional roller coaster pretty much every day. So I not only talk about these strategies, I'm actively using them and I know they work. And it can be really hard to build a new skill for us as adults, especially as we're trying to teach that for our kids. So we're going to get into that today. So, the first bit we have here is really, really thinking about our kids' behavior, thinking about their ups and downs as an iceberg, right? And so often what we see is just a little bit of what is happening for them, right? And so, a lot of times in the world of child development, we talk about behavior. And when I say behavior, I mean anything. I mean the great moments, all those really good positive feelings when kids are on point and they're playing and they're doing all this wonderful stuff. I also mean the tricky moments, which at this age is totally developmentally appropriate too. So, what we see when we look at this iceberg and we look at sort of the top part, the part that we can see, we think about that as the form of the behavior. That's what we can see, right? We see maybe the crying or the tantruming or the screaming or the defiance, the no's, the stop it. I have a 3.5 year old who's very into calling me and my husband naughty right now. So you're a naughty mommy, which is interesting because that's not really a word we use in my house, but kids pick up things. So that's what we can see. Then we look underneath the water, right? The bigger part of the iceberg is that function. And that's really telling us what's going on. What is this behavior trying to communicate to us, right? And so, what we really want to focus on as we think about our kids' ups and downs is this part that's under the water. What is the function of that behavior? Are they trying to request something? Are they trying to get away from something? Generally, most of our big behaviors fall into those two buckets. Kids are either trying to escape or get away from something they don't want to do, a sensory thing they don't like, a demand or a request that we made that they don't want to comply with, right? Maybe it's a limit that we've set that they don't enjoy, they don't want to do that thing. Or they're saying, I need you. They're requesting, they're saying, I need you to be closer. I need you to play with me. I need some attention. I need more sensory input. I need, maybe I need a little bit of containment or a boundary or a limit to help me feel safe and secure. So, we're going to really be thinking about this iceberg as we talk about those ups and downs today, because it can be really easy to just focus on what we can see. And sometimes what we see can push our buttons as parents because it can be exhausting and it can be tiring and it can be difficult and we can feel helpless or frustrated or just done sometimes, like I'm not quite sure what to do, right? But what we really want to do is sort of shift and reframe some of that thinking to the why, and that's underneath our iceberg. Why is this happening? What's our best guess? What do we think this behavior is communicating? So, like I said, we want to really be thinking about every behavior as a form of communication. So, every behavior communicates a message, and generally, we're going to land in two buckets: that I want or need something. So, that might be saying, I want a toy or an activity or a TV show or a preferred blanket or a preferred food, right? It might be, I want an adult. I need a specific adult to help me with something. It might be, I want a friend to play with. It could be, I need affection. I need that hug. I want that physical touch to help calm my body down. It could be, I want to keep doing something. I don't want to stop. I'm having a lot of fun. I want to keep doing this thing. Or sometimes again we see those behaviors and they fall into that avoid bucket. I don't want to go into that big group and play with all those kids. I'm not quite sure if this activity is interesting to me. I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing. um, or I would like to avoid some of those loud noises or some of those pieces that feel uncomfortable to me. So again, we're going to be thinking about these big points. Behavior is always communicating a message to us. Okay, whether it's behavior we want to see more of or behavior we'd like to see less of, that's always communicating a message. And generally, these behaviors, when we think about that iceberg and we think about what's underneath the water, that behavior is either saying, I want something or I need something, or I want to avoid or escape something. Okay, so we just want to hold that as we talk today. So, a lot of what we're seeing when we see these ups and downs on the day to day or the hour by hour is really emerging self regulation. And when we think about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds, we're really thinking about self regulation as an emerging skill. We wouldn't expect a 5 year old, a 6 year old, a 7 year old to have perfect self regulation. We wouldn't expect an 8 year old to have perfect self regulation. I don't know if you all have some adult friends, maybe adult relatives, maybe people you live with in your adult home who don't have perfect self regulation, right? It's a skill, it's something we develop, and it's something that we build over time. I think there is a little bit of this common misperception out there that, by the age kids hit kindergarten or by the time they're in third grade, they should have developed this skill. We know that's just not true when we look at early childhood brain development. We know that a big burst of development is going to happen and self regulation is really starting to come online in this sort of 0 to 6, 0 to 8 age range. But we know it takes a lot of practice and there's a lot of skill building that happens all the way up through to when people are in their mid 20s and even a little bit later. So when we think about self regulation, we're really thinking about this idea that a person, a child can hit a hard feeling. And rather than going from 0 to 100, so I don't know if any of you all have a child who goes from 0 to 100, they hit that limit where you say, nope, we're all done with the bath, or, oh, time to turn shows off, or this is what we're having for dinner, right? We sort of set that boundary. That might make a child feel a certain way, right? They might feel frustrated, they might feel angry, they might feel disappointed, they might feel sad, they might feel really excited, right? It's not just sort of these negative feelings. We know that when kids feel really excited or they have a lot of energy in their body, right? We know that sometimes they go from this 0 to 100. So they go from feeling directly to doing. And when we think about kids who have really good self regulation, they go from feeling to thinking to doing or acting. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that again. When we see kids who have good self regulation, they go from feeling that feeling, they hit that difficult feeling, I'm really disappointed, I wanted more time in the tub, to thinking, okay, but I know we have tub again tomorrow, or we have tub again the next day, or I know after tub comes playing, which I really love. I can do a puzzle or I can do a show or whatever that thing is, right? So they go from feeling to thinking to acting. And generally, what we see also is that these kids, when they go from this feeling to thinking or acting, they're using some type of skill. They're able to say something like, I'm really disappointed, or I wanted more tub time. And then they're kind of like, okay, but I'll get out, right? Like I'll comply. I will go along with whatever the direction is. They're also able to ask for help. So they might say, can you lift me out of the tub? I can't do it myself. Even if we know they can do it themselves, right? They might be seeking that comfort. They might be saying, I want your help. And they're able to ask for it with their words, right? They're able to sort of self take a break. So they might say, I need a minute, I need space, or I need to jump on the trampoline, or I need to take a deep breath, right? They're able to sort of say, I need a break, and they're able to talk themselves down. So they're able to recognize I'm really angry and start to sort of self-regulate. They're able to start to say, what do I need to do to get a little bit more comfortable, to regulate a little bit more? And then they're also able to have other skills, right? So they might do things like smell the flower, blow the bubbles, right? A way we practice deep breathing. They might do things like give yourself a big bear hug and rock back and forth, right? Because that might feel really comfortable to them. They might have strategies like, I'm going to sit on my hands, or I'm going to put my hands in my pocket so that my hands stay safe, right? Especially if they're someone who tends to want to scratch or swipe or hit, right? So they have these other strategies that they're able to use. I just want to clarify that this is when we see kids who are really good at self-regulation. And again, we would not expect any child in the early childhood age range of 0 to 8 to have a fully developed self-regulation skill set, right? And so oftentimes what we see is sometimes we see our child maybe go from that, they hit that hard feeling, they're able to think a little bit, right? They might pause, and then they might act and they might do the thing we don't really want them to do, right? But they're able, we see the thinking part coming online. That pause is there. They're kind of thinking about it. Sometimes that's even more frustrating to us as parents, right? Because we're like, you're thinking about it, and then you still decided to do the thing that we know isn't the best choice, right? But if you think about it from how self-regulation is developed in the brain, that thinking piece is there, which is actually a really good thing. That means it's starting to come online and we're going to work on what the action is, but we have that thinking place there. If you have a kiddo, I will say my child, it really flip flops, right? We still have a lot of 0 to 100. I have the big feeling and I go right to acting and there's no thinking in between. That's okay. The skill is still coming online. And it's important for us to know that and to say, okay, we're going to work really hard on how we help to support that thinking piece to be integrated into our skill set. And we have some really good strategies today that we can talk about that are going to help that thinking piece. So as we think about self-regulation, it can be also really helpful to think about how self-regulation is developed in the brain. And so self-regulation is built like a ladder. We come out of the womb with auto-regulation. Babies come out with the ability to have the sucking reflex. They have a heartbeat. They have a breath, right? All of those are auto-regulation. And so if you think about why, for instance, the sucking reflex is so important for a baby, we would think about that being important because that is how they feed, right? They're able to feed, they're able to suck. But when you think about how we also soothe the baby, what do we give them often? We give them a pacifier, or maybe they suck their thumb, or maybe they feed when they're upset, right? That sucking reflex is one of our very, very first ways that we are able to regulate ourselves. And so a big piece of that is also thinking about I'm so sorry. I'm just getting a little bit of background noise. If you don't mind muting yourself for right now, and then we're gonna have a chance
OK，妈妈拿
to
掉了。OK，你去。没，这是耳机。OK，妈妈拿掉了。OK。
so sorry. We're going to have a chance to have a discussion in just a few minutes. We're just going to go through the content and then I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll be able to have a chance to have a discussion, ask questions, all of that good stuff. So like I was saying, autoregulation, that sucking reflex is one of our very first ways that we learn to calm ourselves as an infant coming right out of the womb. Oftentimes we see this pop back up. So you may see kids who still like to suck their thumb. You may see kids who like to suck their shirt or their sleeves, things like that. That's sort of going back to that very automatic way that we calmed our system from a very early time. If you're an adult, you may be a foot tapper or a pen clicker or a knee bouncer. Again, that fits into that auto regulation. You do it and you don't even realize you're doing it kind of, and it sort of regulates your system. The thing we want to focus on is this idea of co-regulation. And co-regulation is really using those important relationships to either sort of wake up that child system or calm that system down. So an example of that would be if we have a child who is super, super sleepy or kind of withdrawn or really down, And we might use our relationship to sort of help wake that system up. We might say, come on, let's bounce together. Let's pat that back together, right? And we might do it with more energy. Similarly, if we're thinking about how we calm that system down, which is generally where we're at, how do we calm the system down? We're thinking about all those things we do for an infant, right? What do we do for that baby when they first come out and they're upset, right? We rock them, we rub their back, we shh, right? We do things in rhythm. Oftentimes we do things that are deep in relation. So we look at their eyes when we're rocking them, or we're really holding them close when we're soothing them. And a big part of co-regulation is making sure that us as the adult is really regulated, right? So I always use the example that as a first-time mom, was this early childhood person and thought I had it like, yeah, I've got this. I'm an early childhood person. And I just remember holding my baby and he was crying and crying, and I'm using all the tricks, walking up and down the stairs, bouncing them, shh, 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 right? Doing everything I could think of, singing to them, swaddling them, right? Holding them close, holding them a little further away, all the things. I have a friend walk in, she says, "Here, take a break." I hand her the baby, and what does my baby do? He stops crying, right? So I go into a deep shame spiral because I'm like, oh, the early childhood person can't even soothe her own baby. But what was really happening is I wasn't regulated, right? So as I was trying to calm my baby, my system was starting to get more and more stressed. And the way that looked is my heart rate was increasing, my body temperature was going up. As I was trying to soothe my baby, my arms were actually starting to get like a little more tense, right? And my little new baby, who has no words and or not that many experiences out in the world, was saying, "Whoa, you don't feel calm." So I'm not going to calm down because everything about your body right now is telling me I should not feel calm, right? And the reason I use that example is this holds true for our kids as they get older too, all the way up through teens, right? When we are able to be regulated and we're able to sort of have that plan and have some of those skills in our back pocket of what we need to do in those tricky moments, it's going to be a lot easier to do that co-regulation. But we have to stop and take a few minutes for ourselves. So whether that's deep breathing, whether that's walking away for a minute, whether that is having a mantra that you use, whether that is just repeating the plan of what does it look like when this behavior happens, that I need to really regulate my child and use myself to do that. That's what we need. That's where we need to start. And then we can think about how we really leverage our relationship and help our child. And so a lot of the examples I gave are what you would do with a baby, but we can age those up for kids as they get older. And the big piece is so often our kids who are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they still need this co-regulation because without co-regulation, you can't develop self-regulation. So all that stuff we just talked about, all those great things, like we go from feeling to thinking to acting. If we want our child to be able to do that, we really have to make sure that they have enough of this co-regulation, which is us supporting them through those hard moments. And sometimes we get into this space where it's like, okay, you can do this yourself. You've got this. And sometimes they might, and sometimes they might not. And that's for us to sort of start to stop and reflect and think about what are those moments where kids can work through those tricky points on their own, and what are the times that they really do need us and our relationship in this co-regulation to help them work through those hard moments. I think another piece that I find often with my 3-year-old is my personal inclination when I start to get frustrated is I want to back away. I want to be like, okay, I'm going to give you space. You figure it out, right? Because I'm kind of done. I'm tired of the behavior, or I feel frustrated, or I'm feeling dysregulated, right? I'm not in that space to co-regulate. I know what he needs though is for me to be closer. He needs me to be close by. And so that's a point too where I need to stop and say, what do I need to do so that I can stay close? Oftentimes, one thing I do is just offer a hug. You're really, really angry right now. You just showed me how angry you were because you scratched me. Do you need a hug? What do you need? Right. Our inclination is to maybe say, "You hurt me, so I need space from you. You need to figure it out on your own," right? But we know for kids this age, um, that when they're not feeling great and they have some of these behaviors, what they really need is this co-regulation. They need to know I'm still loved, I'm still safe, I'm still cared about. And once they're calm, once they're in this better regulated place, then we can talk about, what's a natural consequence to what just happened. Then we can talk about what's something else we could do. But in that moment, the biggest thing we can do is help them to regulate because they're not going to really hear anything else that we're saying until they're regulated. So another way to think about it is like a house. And so the first two floors of our house are kind of our comfort zone. That's where like our good living happens and we feel so good and we feel comfortable, right? We hit a hard feeling. Some kids might sort of fly through the roof. And that's where we see a lot of these big externalizing behaviors, things like crying, hitting, kicking, throwing, running away, screaming, the big tantrums. We may have some other kids who fall through the basement. Those are the kids who kind of feel really sad or they get withdrawn or they just sort of shut down. They might be silent, they might be frozen, they might be kind of blank there. That's kind of our withdrawn. Both of these are dysregulated. And it's interesting if you stop here and think about it for a second. Think about yourself when you feel really stressed. Are you a fly through the roof person or are you a fall through the basement person? Because generally we go one direction. Obviously, we can go either direction, but usually most people have one direction that they are like, oh, yeah, I'm a fly through the roof, or nope, I'm a fall through the basement. I will share in my household, I'm a fly through the roof. My husband is a fall through the basement. So that gets really interesting because I'm up here being like, help pull me back down into the comfort zone. And he's down in the basement and he's like, pull me up into the comfort zone. And when we're both having a hard moment, it's difficult for us to do that because we can't do it for each other and we have to rely on our own self regulation skills. And we know even as adults, sometimes that can be really hard. So it's important to sort of think about where's your natural tendency? And then you can think about what's my child's natural tendency? Do they tend to fly through the roof during those really tricky moments, or do they tend to fall through the basement during those tricky moments? So, why we are talking about this, right? Again, our self regulation, we're really thinking about this early brain development that's happening right now for our kids in this sort of 0 to 6, 0 to 8 age range. And we're holding that what kids are learning so much, right? There's so much happening in their brain. And that when we think about how to support them through those ups and downs and through the various emotions and behaviors we might see, and again, really holding that every behavior is going to communicate a message. We know that we need both sides of our brain working really well. So, our left side of our brain, that's generally where our thinking happens. Our logic is housed in our left side. Our language is housed in our left side. Our planning or our cause and effect is held in our left side. And then in our right side, we hold our emotions, our social capacities, our empathy, our creativity. And so when there's a tricky moment happening, oftentimes we're stuck in either the right side of our brain or the left side of our brain, and they're not doing a great job talking to each other. And our job through that co-regulation is to help our children's brain start to say, hey, you have a really safe, important relationship here as your parent who can help you to get through this hard moment and can help you if you're stuck over here on the right side and you're deep in that feeling of I'm just so angry, I can't think about a cause and effect. I can't think about a plan. I can't make a choice because that's all on the left side of my brain. And I can't access that right now because I am so deep in my right side and my feelings right now. We can help them come up with that plan to help work through that. We can help to regulate them so that they can make a choice, so that we can have that logical reasoning or that natural consequence that might happen. If we have a left brain kiddo who's really stuck in the left side, they might be like, this is the plan. I don't care how anyone else feels because this was the plan. And we said this was the plan, and now you're not following the plan, and I need the plan, right? Like nothing is going to happen until we go back to that plan, right? We might be really stuck in the planning or the cause and effect. That's where, again, we're going to leverage our relationship. We're going to really help to support our child by coming over and helping with that emotional side, helping them to work through with some of that empathy and some of that flexibility. So again, we're really thinking about co-regulation as helping our kids left and right sides of their brains talk to one another when they're having these difficult moments, or when we see the ups and downs, or when that behavior might be occurring. And then we also just want to hold that kids, there's a lot of development happening in this 0 to 8 age range, right? There's language coming online. There's so much gross motor stuff happening, occupational type stuff happening. We're having a lot of different changes that are going on for them. They may have sibling dynamics that they're dealing with. They may have other cognitive pieces that they're going with. They may have different languages that they're learning. There's a lot of developmental ladders. And we used to think about there just being sort of this one developmental ladder and it's going straight up to the sky and you're kind of like somewhere on it, right? But what we know now, and as we think about child development, we're really holding that there's a lot of different ladders happening at different times. And some ladders are going to be higher than others, and some are going to be lower than others. And that's okay, right? If you have a child who was a really early walker, right? Who is a kiddo who was moving on the go super early, like 10 months, 12 months, right? Um, we might expect that language might come online a little later, or we might expect that some of the other developmental skills might come online a little because the body was focused so much on that gross motor, that walking, that skill. And we can see the same thing as kids get older too. If you have a kiddo who is really great at writing, or is reading already, or doing some of those pieces, we might expect that some of the social skills might be in the back a little bit because their cognitive piece is up front working really hard. And so it's not a good or a bad. It's just, again, something to notice, something to reflect on, and to say, like, where are those strengths and where are the places that we really want to be intentional about and really help to support around. Okay, so let's talk about some prevention strategies. Next week, we're going to really talk about what do we do when we're in it, in the moment, when that sort of tricky moment is happening. We're going to walk through step by step. Today, we're really thinking about what are some of those skills that we can leverage our co-regulation with and help to practice as kids are in a better place, and to help them if they are having a tricky moment, sort of bring them back down or pull them back up. Again, thinking about our house. So, some ideas to support our regulation. One great idea is to come up with a list of things with your child. So, what's something that helps, and do this when they're calm, right? We don't want to do this in the moment. We don't want to do it when they're feeling frustrated or they're having a difficult feeling. We really want to think about doing this when they're calm. In the car is a great place because we're not making direct eye contact. On a walk is a great place to ask about these things because we're getting some really good bilateral stimulation. And so sometimes it's easier for kids to open up and talk about it. And we can make it into a game. We can make it fun. We can say, let's do a little sensory inventory. What feels good for you? Does listening to music really help to calm you down? Does doing a drawing really help to calm you down? Does counting to 10 really help calm you down? Does doing 20 big jumps up and down, holding my hands help to calm you down, right? Sometimes we think about calming, it has to be like the deep breathing and the really quiet. But for some kids, they need a little bit more up, right? Like they need to jump, they need to do wall push ups, they need to push up against your hands really hard, right? They need to be swaddled really tight in a blanket, even if they're 6 or 7. So you can sort of do a little game. You can say, what feels good for your body? And then make a list. Say, these are the things that really help me to calm down. These are the things that don't help me so much, right? Maybe it's getting a drink of water. I just read this interesting thing that talked about sucking on straws. Again, brings us back to that really early auto regulation of the sucking reflex. And so that can be a way to help kids regulate too when they're having a hard time, or sort of the water bottles that have the straw in them. That can be a skill that they can use. So we can sort of create our own calm down basket, or our own calm down inventory, right? So that might be our list of what we can do when we're feeling frustrated. We might have some tools in there if they're saying, my favorite stuffed animal helps me to calm down, or having a visual of some of those things that are on our list helps them to calm down. We can put that stuff together, and that can be sort of our calm down basket, or our way that we regulate. There's also things like the glitter calm down jars. There's a ton of recipes on Pinterest for that, or just if you Google glitter calm down jar, they're fun and easy to make. And the idea is, again, you have some type of bottle or jar, you put glitter and glue in it, and you shake it, shake it, shake it up, and then you tip it over and you watch the glitter fall. And as you watch the glitter fall, it's kind of a mindfulness moment. It's a way to just sort of help your body give time, give space, and start to slow down. We can also think about stop and go behaviors. So this can be helpful, especially for some of our younger kids out there. So is this a stop or go can be another way that we are able to sort of give a preview or a warning if a behavior is starting to kind of escalate a little bit or sort of rev up a little bit. We might review what are our stop behaviors, what are our go behaviors. And again, having kids really be a big part of that. You can also think about creating some type of cozy space at home. So this might be like a calm down corner, a calming space, where again, this is not meant to be a timeout. It's not meant to be like, you need to go use the cozy corner, right? We don't want it to turn into that. This is really meant to be a space that your child can use anytime and that they're self-directed to. So you might practice going to the calming place or the cozy space. You might practice what you do in there. You might suggest, oh, it seems like you're really upset. Maybe we should go together. If they don't want to, we don't need to push it though. Okay. Again, this is really a space that's meant to be kind of a calming spot, a cozy spot. We don't want it to turn into a timeout spot. And the idea again is it's a set boundary or a set space that we help to make comfy for our kids, with our kids. That's a big part. We want them to be included in this. And we practice and we say, what can we do when we feel really upset? Because everyone gets angry or everyone gets upset. Grown-ups get upset, kids get upset. These are some things we can do. And we can share strategies that work for us. And again, think about those strategies that we might practice with our child when they are in a good place. Okay, so that's key. We really want to make sure that when we are practicing these things, we're doing it a lot when they are regulated, when they're in a good spot. Okay, because if we don't practice the skill enough, they're not going to be able to use it when they're really frustrated. We have to make sure we're teaching and practicing it when they're in a good, calm time. And then we also really want to think about sometimes when it feels like, okay, Julia, yeah, but like the hard moments feel like they're happening a lot. I'm like deep in the three, y'all. So like the hard moments feel like they're happening a lot for me these days where I'm like, I feel like I'm constantly redirecting or saying, oh, that's not safe. Or, you know, yeah, just sort of on my son because he's like a danger boy and also I'm a naughty mommy half the time, right? So we really want to make sure that if you are in that space or you have been in that space or we go through different developmental like growth spurts and we want to make sure that we're really noticing what's going right. So sometimes when we're in those hard times, it's really easy to notice all the things that aren't going right or all the things our child isn't doing that we love. We really want to focus on how are we making sure that we're naming what's going right, that we're saying, wow, wow, when you came over and you sat down for dinner on the first try, when I asked you the first time, you came right over and you sat in your seat. That was listening. You used amazing listening ears, right? We're going to really make sure that we're praising them. And it's not just like, good job, you came to dinner, right? We want to give them that really good, descriptive, positive feedback. So, what was it that they did? You had your ears on. You came the first time I asked you for dinner. You sat right down on your seat and you went right to town and you started eating dinner. Wow. That was amazing listening. You listened, right? And we're going to also think about the intensity that we do that with. So often we have a lot of intensity within our body or our voice when we are setting a limit or when we're frustrated or when we're like, I'm going to give you one more chance, right? Even if we're using a calmer voice, our face often looks a little more stressed. The tone of our voice could be more stressed. There's more intensity to it. We want to think about having that big intensity when we're giving the positive feedback too. And so We have this magic ratio here, which can be difficult sometimes, but it's really thinking about how are we making sure that we're giving more of that positive feedback across the day than the negative redirecting stuff. And this can make a huge difference. And I always suggest for people who are in it right now, if you're in it like I'm in it, start small. Set a timer for yourself, set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes and say, I'm going to really focus on this ratio. So every time I make a withdrawal, every time I say a no or a don't or a stop, or I have to give a direction or I have to make a demand or I use a loud voice or I maybe make a request that's like, well, if you do this, we're not going to go to the, to the play date, right? We know in the moment, things pop out of our mouths. Okay. Things pop out of my mouth all the time. I'm not proud of it. There are things where I'm like, oh, I know better than to say that. And I just said it because I'm frustrated right now. But if you set that timer for 5 to 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, choose one time of day, start small, right? And really actively think about this 5-to-1 ratio. So every time you say a no, don't stop to your child, every time you have to give a direction or sort of make a demand of them, like it's time to get your pajamas on, put your pajamas on, put your shirt on, put your pants on, right? That's what we're considering like a demand or a direction. um, really think about that 5-to-1. So, how are we then making these really good deposits? How are we observing or doing some of that really good sports casting? Look at you. Whoa, you just had that big truck jump over the other truck. Wow. Then he landed on the rug. Now, what's the other truck going to do? Right? We're just narrating what they're playing. Think about how you are getting in close with your child and showing them affection in whatever way feels right for them. Think about active listening. So, are you really listening to what your child's saying? Are you following up with questions that are more child led, that are really getting at them talking more, at them being able to share more with you? Are you giving them things like wait time? So a lot of times we give a direction, and this happens to me often, especially as the night progresses and I'm tired, right? We give a direction and then we give it the direction again right away. Put your pajamas on. It's time to put your pajamas on. Go put your pajamas on. Pajamas, wear our pajamas. Let's put our pajamas on. Right? And we're like the broken record. Oftentimes, if we just give a little wait time, so if we literally count out 10, 15 seconds and like truly make it 10 or 15 seconds before we give the direction again, we just give our child some wait time. We might even give them a minute before we give the direction again. They will start to come over and do that thing. Just so often we don't give enough time for them to sort of process what we've asked them to do and then come over and do it. So wait time can be a huge thing. Thinking about how we're playing with kids, how we are, again, really giving that good, positive, descriptive feedback. That's all super important and can be a huge game changer. You can start to notice a difference oftentimes um, in a day or two. If you're really thinking about that 5-to-1 ratio, it can just flip the script a little bit and say we're focusing way more on the things that are going right than the things aren't. And we're giving a lot more really good positive attention to the skills that we want to see more of, as opposed to giving that intensity to the things that we would prefer to see less of, the behaviors we would prefer to see less of. We can also use things like a first then board. So this can be really helpful, especially if you have kids who are visual learners. I know for my family, it's been extremely helpful for new routines. So we just transitioned from a crib into a big boy bed. And so we have sort of a new bedtime routine, and we made a first then board when we made a visual schedule of what the bedtime routine looks like. And it's been really helpful to be able to go back to that bedtime routine, and that can help to hold limits as well. So the first then board is really breaking out. First, we're going to get dressed, then we're going to get in the car. Or first, we're going to get dressed, then we're going to have breakfast. So you're thinking about what's happening next. And that way you're able to stay really consistent with what are we focused on doing first, and then what's going to happen next. And sometimes this is all we have to say. First, we're getting dressed, and then it's time to go outside. First dressed, then outside, right? And we can kind of block out all the noise. So if that's upsetting to our child, we can really hold, this is what we're doing first, and then we're doing this, right? And so that can help us to stay regulated, and that can help them to show that we're going to follow through with consistency as well. So again, visual schedules can be really helpful, morning routines, nighttime routines. If there's a particularly tricky transition that you have in your day, this can be extremely helpful to have a little visual schedule of even just that transition. Um, Kids can take pictures of themselves doing it. They can draw pictures, they can be included. You can have this on Velcro. You could have it on a whiteboard where they're able to cross it off once they do it or erase it once they do it. But just knowing the predictability of what's going to happen next can be really, really helpful. And that can help us to calm some of those big ups and downs that we see in behavior. This is a big one, the power of choice. So a lot of times people are like, but if I give them a choice, I'm giving in to them, Julia. And everyone says you should like hold the limit and be consistent. Choice is really, really important for younger children. I think choice is really important for all of us, right? Think about, would you rather choose what you're going to have for lunch or have someone tell you what you're having for lunch every single day, right? We as adults make a lot of choices across the day. Sometimes we probably would rather have someone just tell us, like, hey, this is what's happening. And you might be like, great, thank you. I don't have to make a decision. Perfect. But we know for young kids, choice is so powerful. It's so important for them to be able to practice and to maintain engagement in what's happening. And it's a really big part of active learning. And it's also a really big part in just sort of their social underpinning, right? Of being able to say, like, I have agency, I'm my own person, I'm able to make decisions and choices for myself. And so as we think about choices, we want to, it can be, again, a really powerful strategy and it can decrease behaviors that we would like to see less of. I think it's really important we think about how we give a choice. And so the first step of that is really making sure that we are okay with whatever choice we're going to offer. Okay. So that's the first step. And this is where things go off the rails oftentimes because we offer a choice and we're like, wait a second, I really wanted you to choose this one and you chose the other one and that was the wrong choice. We don't want to get into that type of power struggle. Whatever choice you give to your child, you need to make sure you feel okay with first. So a choice might be something like, do you want to go to the bathroom now or do you want to go to the bathroom in 2 minutes, right? If our goal is to make sure our child goes to the bathroom before we leave the house, and for me, whether you do it right this minute or you do it in 2 minutes, it doesn't bother me. Fine, you make the choice, right? And so that 2 minutes comes, right? And we say, well, what if they don't go then? And you already gave them the 2 minutes. Now they're not going to go. So we might offer another choice. Do you want to walk to the bathroom by yourself and go, or do you need me to help you? Would you like me to help you walk to the bathroom with you? Do you want to hold hands to walk to the bathroom? Again, we're saying you have to go to the bathroom. That's our ultimate goal, but we're going to give you some choices along the way. That's more in the sense of choice of, if we think there might be a little bit of a power struggle, we can give a lot of choices across the day. And I think thinking about what we can let go of and what we really can let our children have choice around is really powerful. And again, it takes a little bit of reflection on our part. And the more we practice it, the easier it gets. And we can sort of say, like, yeah, actually, that is okay. We can give more yeses. And the more yeses we're able to give across the day for our kids, the easier things are going to be in the long run. We can also think about the steps of problem solving. So this is another really important strategy, is to really break down, how do we start to learn to solve problems? How do we name when there's a problem? We have a problem. You both, right? You and your brother both want to use the wagon, but he has it first. So let's think about it. What is our problem? Oh, you both want to use the wagon. What are some solutions that we could think of? We could wait, right? You could wait to take your turn. You could ask, can I have a turn? You could offer to trade an item, right? So you can think of these solutions. And then the third step is, what would happen if we use that solution? Would that be a fair solution? Would that make everyone feel okay? How would you feel if someone asked that solution for you? And then the fourth step is to give it a try. So again, this is a great thing to do to sort of for like lower stakes. So as you're introducing steps of problem solving, using it in situations that aren't really intense or aren't really big, right? Because we want to be able to practice it. This is another place where you can role play with toys. You can role play with one another, right? When we're nice and calm, thinking about the steps of problem solving and solutions. But the first thing, even just being able to name, we have a problem. Hmm, what could we do, can be really powerful. And that can help to bring our child in to be part of the solution, to be in this sort of relationship versus us telling them over and over, right? And when they're in it, they're going to be more engaged and they're going to be more likely to follow through with whatever that solution is that we brainstorm. And then this is another piece to sort of our problem solving, but we can help kids to start to identify how big is your problem? Is it an elephant sized problem where we might need an adult's help? Or is this a mouse sized problem where we could probably solve it on our own? So the first step is really making sure we introduce those steps to problem solving. The second step is we can start to expand that and we can say, is this something you can solve on your own? Is this a mouse sized problem? I think it is. You've got this. This is a mouse sized problem. And we can talk about what are mouse sized problems and what are elephant sized problems. And this is just a little visual that you can make or use if you're a crafty person. If not, that's okay too. But if you're out there and you're like, yes, we're a visual type family, this works for us, you can have a little elephant or a mouse size on a popsicle stick. And then but not least, a huge preventative thing that we can do to support those ups and downs that our kids might be feeling is to play with them. So we know scientists have told us that it takes approximately 400 repetitions to create a new synapse in the brain unless it's done with play, in which case it takes between 10 and 20 repetitions. So as we're introducing some of these new skills that you might not be using at home, or you may be, but you want to be more intentional about, really think about how you can do this through play, whether it's you playing with your child, whether it's using figurines to act it out, whether it's role playing back and forth, whether it's just being present and playing with your kids for 10 minutes of uninterrupted time a day. We know that makes a difference. That can really help, especially when we're having those difficult times where it feels like all we're doing is saying no, don't stop, right? When we're able to give them those 10 really good minutes and play the way they want to play, that can really help to shift, and it can help to build these new synapses in our brain too, which is amazing. All right. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to stop our recording. And then if folks have any questions or comments or anything like that, please feel free. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording right now.